Yes, Pinto.
Yes,
Sanjay
ma'am.
Pinto.
Even if you've sold your vehicle years ago, are you aware that you are still liable in accident cases if your name still figures as the owner in the records of the concerned regional transport officer (RTO)? A ruling of the Supreme Court in Naveen Kumar versus Vijay Kumar in 2018 was a wake up call for sellers who bask in the comfort of a mere delivery note and the formality of having signed transfer forms. The court had adopted a strict interpretation of Section 230 of the Motor Vehicles Act, which defines the owner as a person in whose name a motor vehicle stands registered. There are only two exceptions: when the owner is a minor, the guardian is deemed to be the owner. If the vehicle is hypothecated to a bank, the person in possession of the vehicle under that agreement is considered the owner. Now, the court's rationale is that the victim of a motor accident, or in the case of death, the legal heirs of the deceased victim should not be left in a state of uncertainty. A claimant for compensation ought not to be burdened with following a trail of successive transfers which are not registered with the registering authority. This reasoning is also reflected in Section 50 of the MV Act, which places the onus of reporting the transfer of ownership to the RTO on the seller. However, the letter of the law, and I'm sure all of you will agree with me, is far removed from the practice on the ground. The vehicle resale market is controlled by middlemen who connect buyers with sellers either directly or through retail showrooms of automobile manufacturers offering exchange bonuses. Often the broker carries out repairs, spruces up the sold vehicle with a fresh coat of paint, keeps it in his workshop till a suitable buyer is identified. So there is no immediate buyer or transferee with most sales in the second-hand market. If it is a high-end luxury car, transfer of ownership is deliberately not affected in the RTO records as the price takes a hit with every change of owner. Failure to comply with transfer formalities may entail in a pittance of 100 to 300 rupees as a fine under Section 177 of the MV Act. But the sting is in the liability for non-compliance in the event of an accident. Now, what if sellers are caught between unscrupulous buyers or brokers or even third-party insurance lapses pending transfer of ownership? What if the buyer plies the vehicle without transferring ownership and renewing insurance in contravention of Section 146 of the MV Act? A vehicle sale is not like a marriage for sellers to check the antecedents of buyers, is it? Refusal to cooperate with the completion of transfer of ownership in RTO records is not uncommon. Just like a bank cannot be made liable for an accident involving a hypothecated vehicle, as held by the Supreme Court in HDFC Bank versus Kumari Reshma in 2014, shouldn't the buck stop at the door of the person who has physical possession and control of the vehicle in the case of an accident? The MV Act must be amended to ensure that for a valid sale, possession is handed over only after the paperwork is completed by the seller and the RTO records are updated. Surely in digital India, the process can be made completely online with the facility to upload the registration certificate. Now, most of us have smart cards. A printout of an acknowledgement of transfer of ownership from the RTO must be accepted as full discharge of liability at the seller's end. A re-registration with minor tweaking the vehicle number, just like amendments in laws are marked, may also be explored. In courts, limitation for filing appeals is calculated from the date of receipt of certified copies of judgments, with only the delay in applying for them deducted in the tally. Innocent sellers must not be fastened with liability because of systemic delays, red tape, and sloth that RTOs in the country are accused of, or a devil-may-care attitude of buyers. A vehicle cannot ever be in no man's name. The apex court's concern for accident victims or claimants is justifiable, is reasonable, is understandable. But please, let's spare a thought for sellers who are often forced to run around to get the transfer of ownership of their old sold vehicles reflected in RTO records.